Okay, everyone, this is a presentation by Adam Rossi on solar and Jerusalem Farm. And you probably already had a chance to read his bio, so I think I'll let him take over at this point. Go ahead, Adam.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ken. Yeah, excited to be here. Adam Rossi, AmeriCorps Vista volunteer at Jerusalem Farm, a nonprofit in Northeast KC and here to talk a little bit about our low-income solar program called Empower the Northeast. Also want this to be a discussion. I definitely want to get some feedback on our program and how to make it better. And then at the end, if we have time, kind of more I don't know, slightly esoteric discussion about how maybe HRES, Heartland Renewable Energy Society, can help play a role in trying to bring solar to more people and make it a more equitable space. So, okay, I'm going to share my screen here and pull up my presentation. Let's see here, share screen. There it is. I like to tell people I'm 31 years old, but when it comes to technology, I'm like 97. Okay, can everyone see my screen at this point? Presentation. Okay, great. Super cool. Slideshow. And we're rolling. So can solar lead to more equitable energy? I hope, and I think I want to frame this discussion by saying I think we have a great opportunity on our hands. But I don't think that it is just decided like, oh, if we decarbonize our grid, it will be a more equitable grid. That is not necessarily true. So I think we have to be conscious about how we decarbonize our grid in order to take advantage of this opportunity to make it more equitable and to bring more people power in a just way. Okay, so that's kind of my frame of mind leading into this. So yeah, I work at Jerusalem Farm. I'm sure a lot of you aren't familiar with it, so I'll talk just a little bit about Jerusalem Farm and what we do. But first, a cool sunset solar picture. This is at the farm itself. So we're about 2 miles from downtown. You can see the skyline there with the sunset in the background. Kind of nice picture. Hooray solar, hooray sunsets, hooray life. Okay, so Jerusalem Farm, I think it's pretty cool. I've been here for about 4 years, but the farm has been here for about 12. So a little more than 12 at this point. So we are located in what we call the historic Northeast of Kansas City, Missouri. I'll show you the map on the next page here. But it's about 6 neighborhoods, about 24,000 people is the population here in the Northeast. But we've been here since 2012. Jordan and Jesse Shealy started this place back in the day. They moved here from a community called Nazareth Farm in north central West Virginia and started Jerusalem Farm based on the same model. So we're an intentional community. We're Catholic, Catholic intentional community. Not everyone here is Catholic, and we welcome people of any and no faith background here, but we're kind of our origins are Catholic, and we kind of operate under kind of some of our guiding principles are Catholic social teaching, dealing with dignity of the human person, and there are kind of 6 other principles that lead from there. We also are a nonprofit, so we have done a low-income home repair program in the Northeast since our founding for the last 12 years. And then we also host retreats for high school and college students, primarily during the summer, but also throughout the year. We have a few retreat weeks coming up in the fall. So we have programming for them in the morning and the evening, and then during the day they go out to work sites. So we have different work sites. We work with homeowners throughout the neighborhood, throughout the neighborhoods in the Northeast, doing different minor home repair projects, and the students come work on those home repair projects with the volunteers. We call ourselves full-time volunteers at the farm. We make a living stipend. Um, and then in the morning and evening, they come back and kind of talk about their day, and we have different programming for them. So that's a little bit about Jerusalem Farm. In terms of our work area, This is a little map of the Northeast and our work project. So this is, yeah, again, just about 2 miles from downtown. The Jerusalem Farm is about here. I don't know if you can see my cursor, but where it says Pendleton Heights on this map is about where Jerusalem Farm is. Independence Avenue is kind of the main thoroughfare here. So if you're familiar with Independence Avenue, that's kind of the main street in the Northeast. We have 6 neighborhoods that's in our work area, roughly bounded by Truman Road to the south, essentially the Missouri River to the north, Paseo to the west, and then I-435 to the east. So that's the area that we serve at the farm. And in serving those areas, in serving these homeowners, we've realized a lot of the homeowner projects are things that basically are weatherization projects, or projects that are trying to help make these homes more energy efficient. And it could be things like just like holes in the wall, like you can see outside from these houses. Some of them are in really bad shape, and some of them are in not that bad shape. But we kind of realized through our work over the last 12 years, and again, I've only been here for 4, but Jordan, the founder, and other people on staff here have been here for a while and have kind of realized, you know, weatherization is a key component to helping homeowners save money. But kind of the next step would be like, okay, what if homeowners could generate their own power and not have to pay an investor-owned utility like Evergy for that power? That could also help people in ways that I'm sure everyone here is familiar with, but it's not quite that easy. And so we have a problem, and we're trying to address this problem through our program Empower the Northeast. So what's the problem? So I want to introduce this concept of energy burden. Many of you may all already be familiar with this, but if you aren't, an energy burden is just the percentage of your income that you're paying for energy. And as we go throughout the presentation, I tried to put, whenever I give a stat, I tried to put a citation there. So when you read the parenthetical stuff here, whatever's in parentheses, that's just the citation for the stats I give here. So Fisher, Sheehan, and Colton say in Home Energy Affordability Gap, these experts say that for energy to be affordable, you should be paying 6% or less of your household income on energy. So if you're paying more than 6% of your income on energy, that is unaffordable energy costs, right? So in the central Midwest, the average energy burden is about 3%. So that includes Missouri and Kansas, as well as some other states in the central Midwest. However, for low-income folks, the average energy burden in this area of the country is 8%, which again, notice is above the 6% threshold that these experts say is the threshold for affordable energy. So this is unaffordable for low-income households. And as incomes get lower and lower, energy burdens tend to get higher and higher. So for the most extreme low-income households in the country, their energy burdens can be above 20% in many parts of the country, including the central Midwest. And for those in most extreme poverty, those living below 50% of the poverty line, they can spend about 35% of their income on energy. So over a third of the income they're making goes to energy. And the opposite is also true. So the higher your income, generally the lower percentage of your income you're paying for energy. Another part of the problem is this idea that fossil fuel infrastructure generally is located in poor areas and disproportionately impacts the living environments of people living in poverty. And you can see this all over the country. I actually grew up in Western Maryland, went to school in West Virginia, in Appalachia. So that's coal country. The town I grew up in was a coal mining town, and it is not a wealthy place by any means. People historically, not so much anymore, but historically worked in the mines. And I think a classic example of the fossil fuel infrastructure exploiting people, and then a lot of those, the profit that was made off of those people went to out-of-state investors in New York City or elsewhere. And you see that play out in a lot of places. You see it play out in the Gulf Coast, currently with liquid natural gas export terminals are kind of a big hot button issue right now. That would be really terrible if we have a lot of those go online. A lot of them have been improved, and there's a lot more waiting to be approved, of course. Um, there's a stall on that for the time being. Anyway, point is that oftentimes fossil fuel infrastructure will be located in poor areas, areas where people don't have the capacity really because they're taking care of so many other things in order to fight this infrastructure from going in their own communities. And right where Jerusalem Farm is located in the northeast of Kansas City is no exception. So I guess to back up, the Northeast is a impoverished area, generally speaking. Some parts, like Pendleton Heights, where Jerusalem Farm is located, are very quickly gentrifying. Just in the 12 years the farm has been here, Pendleton Heights, our neighborhood, has changed quite a lot, and now, yeah, housing values are a lot higher than they were historically, and it's a desirable place, I think, for people of means to move. But as you move east on Independence Avenue in the Northeast, it very quickly becomes a community that is a strong immigrant and refugee community. About half the population here is Spanish speaking, speak Spanish as the first language, but there are lots and lots of languages spoken in the Northeast. We have, yeah, strong populations from the Korean community, a lot of African community, French-speaking populations, Swahili-speaking populations. So a diverse community, and definitely not a high-income community as you go east along Independence Avenue. And as you go east, you come upon the Hawthorne Coal Power Plant. So it's located kind of on the Missouri River, just north of the Indian Mound neighborhood. And it's one of the last coal burning power plants in a major city in the United States. So it's right here within the Kansas City city limits. And if you go to the Clean Air Task Force website, they have this kind of cool tool called the toll from coal. And they have a formula on there that figures, okay, based on the emissions from each of these power plants, you can look up any coal power plant operating in the country, and you can look up stats for these different health impacts in a 3 mile radius, and they have, I think, in a 10 mile radius on there as well. So I just pulled these from their website, but this coal power plant is responsible for 5 deaths, 2 heart attacks, 52 asthma attacks, 240 lost work days per year. And within that's within a 3 mile radius. And then within a 3 mile radius, the poverty rate is 32%, whereas the state average is 16%. So double the poverty rate of the state average. So just to illustrate that, the NIMBYism associated, NIMBY, by the way, is not in my backyard. It's the idea there being that people of more political clout are able to lobby for things like coal burning power plants not to go in their backyard. So it's got to go somewhere if it's there. So oftentimes it lands in the backyards of the poor. And the Northeast here is no exception. Okay. So theoretically, solar should be a great thing. Should be maybe not a panacea, but pretty good, right? It should, on the one hand, in terms of fossil fuel infrastructure, and we just talked about all these negative health impacts, solar is, once it's up and operating, it's carbon free, right? So you're not having these negative emissions associated with fossil fuel infrastructure. And if you have solar on your house and you own that system, then you're getting free electricity, right? The sun is free, nobody owns the sun. So theoretically, that would also decrease the energy burden for low-income households and for anyone. So it should be a great thing, right? But it's not that easy. So according to Solar Energy International, The price for solar is somewhere between $2 and $5 per watt in the US. According to Energy Sage, they said the average in the US is about 275 per watt, which means yeah, about $11,000 for a 4 kilowatt system. If you have a 10 kilowatt system, you can see that would be almost $30,000. And that is, if you're low income, a pretty high upfront cost, right? So you're going to have to finance something like this. One way you might finance it is through a loan. But if you do qualify for a loan, which is not a given, a lot of low-income people will not qualify for a loan. FICO credit score is kind of this universal thing used to determine whether a lending institution will give a loan to a homeowner, and a lot of low-income people do not have credit scores high enough to qualify for that loan in the first place. If you do qualify for a loan, that loan will come with interest, and in the solar business, that's often pretty high interest, which is added cost for the homeowner. And that's just the beginning. A lot of low-income people, especially people that I've worked with here in the Northeast, have the solar system is just part of the cost, and it might not be the majority of the cost. They might need a roof replaced. They might need structural upgrades in their roof. The infrastructure of their roof might not be strong enough that it will pass an engineering inspection, a structural engineering inspection, and be able to get stamped by the city to get a solar system installed. A lot of people will need electrical box upgrades. A lot of people will have very out of date, kind of shoddy, honestly, electrical systems. They might not have enough room in their circuit breaker box for a solar power system. I've been in houses where the electricity is just the whole setup is just dangerous. I've had electricians say like you need to completely redo this. So there's a lot of costs associated with going solar and a lot of work. So it's kind of easy to see why people would just throw up their hands and say, well, this isn't worth it. I'm not going to get solar. So the investment tax credit, which goes back to, I don't know how long it goes back to, but it was extended, of course, by the Inflation Reduction Act through 2031, 32. And that's a huge incentive, right? So 30% tax credit, almost a third of the cost of a solar installation, you can write off on your taxes. But this is from this book, Revolutionary Power. It really only helps people who are of a certain income threshold. So as you can read on the screen here, the higher an individual business income, the more tax appetite an individual business has, which means the more benefit you're going to get from that 30% tax credit. So if your tax, if you're paying very low taxes or no taxes at all, you're really not benefiting very much from this 30% tax credit. So that's a design where the higher your income, the more this incentive is benefiting you. And in states like Missouri, this is really the only incentive that exists for solar, as well as Kansas. It's true for Kansas as well. Some states, like my home state of Maryland, have some really strong state incentives for solar on top of federal incentives. But Missouri and Kansas, unsurprisingly, do not have any state incentives. So this is really it. Did want to plug this book. I've cited it a few times now. Revolutionary Power by Shalonda H. Baker. I read this and reread this in the past few years, and think it's a really good framework for how our energy system could change to benefit more people. But I'll come back to this in a minute when I get through the description of what Jerusalem Farm's doing with Empower the Northeast here. Okay, so we have a problem. This is all to say we have a problem, right? 40% of American households earn less than $40,000 a year, but about less than 5% of solar installations are on these low-income households. So again, these are households that could be benefiting the most, could stand to benefit the most from solar, but they have a very, very small share of solar installations. So what do we do about this? Well, here at Jerusalem Farm, this is why we started this program called Empower the Northeast. So what we do is we design and install rooftop solar power systems for low-income homeowners here in the Northeast. We essentially give them a loan. So they pay us back for the cost of the system over 25 years. And when I say essentially, it's not actually a loan. We're not a financial institution that is holding a loan for people. We're just buying the system for them and then asking them to pay us back over 25 years. And that's also the way that our home repair system works. So we do a home repair project for people. They pay us back for the cost of materials. And then once they pay us back, we can move on to another project if they have multiple projects. So the idea here is they start saving money from the day their system is energized. And so we do all this work for them in terms of designing the system, showing them what the cost of the system would be, and kind of modeling, in that 25-year period, and really like from the first year, in the first month, what would they be paying us for that 25-year loan payoff, plus what would their expected cost of electricity with their solar system energized, what would that cost be? And if that cost is lower than what they're currently paying for electricity per month, then it's a win from day one for that person. If that's not the case, if they'd be paying more for a solar power system under this financing model than they're currently paying for electricity, then I tell people don't do it, right? It doesn't make sense. So pretty straightforward. We technically own the system. So Jerusalem Farm owns the system, and we reap the elective pay benefits, meaning that investment tax credit through the IRA is now available to nonprofits. So we would reap that elective pay benefit and then put that towards the next solar power system. And then once that homeowner pays off the system, we would transfer that ownership to the homeowner. So who qualifies? Homeowners. So Jerusalem Farm, this is true for our home repair project, as home repair projects as well. We don't work with renters. So we're open to homeowners who own and occupy their home in the Northeast. They also must live in the historic Northeast. So that is our project area, the 6 neighborhoods of the historic Northeast. So we get calls all the time from people in other parts of the city. But for our home repair project, we have up to a 2-year waiting list for home repair. That's how much need there is just in the Northeast. So we're really just focused on our community here in the Northeast. And then I also want to point out we have different financing models dependent on the income status of the people who are participating. So people who are 60%, people who make 60% area median income, that's what AMI stands for, or below, they will qualify for the financing model I just talked about. So a 25-year no interest loan. People who we would consider kind of middle income, so between 60 and 80% AMI, we would offer that same 25-year loan. And again, I'm using loan in loose terms. It's not technically a loan, but we would ask them to pay us back over 25 years, but we would add 4% interest to that loan, air quotes. And then people who are above 80% area median income, who we would consider not really low income, we don't offer financing, but we would be glad to design and install their system. And then what they would pay us for that system, we would then put towards installing the next system for a low-income homeowner. So Jesse here at the farm refers to this as kind of a Tom Shoes model. So if you're familiar with the Tom Shoes company, this one-for-one idea is that, like, as people are paying for shoes who can afford it, they are donating the cost of another pair of shoes to make another pair of shoes that they donate to people who otherwise wouldn't be able to afford them. So that's kind of the idea here, is that anyone in the Northeast, really, we would be willing to design and install a system for. Depending on their income status, we kind of have this sliding scale, and then whatever money we are generating from those systems, we put then towards the cost of the next system. Okay, so by the way, this is all to say we are very, maybe I should have said this earlier, we're very young, right, in our program here. We're not even quite 2 years old. We'll be 2 years in October is when I officially kind of launched this project. And I applied for a bunch of grants. We ended up piecing together 3 grants, so we're grant funded. And that for about $220,000 is our total budget to get started here. And then spent a lot of time learning kind of ins and outs of how to go zero to solar, as I like to say. And so that's all to say we've done two systems so far. So a lot of this is kind of theoretical framework that we have, but we've only installed systems for low-income homeowners so far. The two systems we've installed so far were people below 60% AMI. And then we have about 10 more people I'm working with that may say yes, may say no, kind of in the planning stages. Some of those people are above 80% area median income. Some of them are below 60%, kind of all over the board, but we're still pretty new. We're working Labor Day weekend is our plan. So next weekend, hopefully, we're going to start our third install with a homeowner who's also below 60% AMI in the Northeast here. So I'm going to stop talking here in a second and want to get your feedback on this. But just a few pictures to share with you. So this is our first install here. That's yours truly holding the panel along with Chur. He's a member of the Korean community. The Korean community, for those of you who aren't familiar, is from like Southeast Asia refugee community. And if you look at a map, what would be Myanmar on the map, I think the Korean community like claims their own territory there, but aren't recognized by the UN as having a separate country. But just another example of what a diverse area the Northeast is. At Jerusalem Farm, for one of our programs, one of our many programs, is a dignified workforce program. So we employ people in the community to come work for us, learn home repair skills, work for us as long as they want to, but then also they would have these skills so they can go out and get a job anywhere theoretically with those home repair skills. So Chur is one of our, we call them companions, but a member of the dignified workforce program. So there we are with the first solar module that's going to be installed as part of Empower the Northeast. There we are on ALO's roof with the completely installed system. This wasn't energized at this point yet, but we had just installed it that day. So here are a few more of our companions. The gentleman in the red t-shirt is Thomas. He is from Tanzania, or Tanzania, as you would say. Lives here in the Northeast, one of our companions. And then the gentleman with the glasses and kind of the winter hat standing next to Joseph is Alo. He's also one of our companions. He's also a member of the Korean community, and this is his house. So he was the first installation. I think it's kind of cool that he helped install the system on his own house, which is yeah, pretty neat. So there's a street view. It was right before Christmas when we installed the system, so they have some Christmas decor up at the time, but there's the completed system. 10 modules, 4 kilowatt system. We use 400-watt modules. And this is Eddie, who doesn't work for us anymore. We contract with him sometimes. He's from Guatemala. He was a companion for a while, but has gone on to bigger and better things, but we'll still do some projects for us once in a while. This is our second install in the Lichens neighborhood. Okay, also want to point out, some of you might be thinking like, okay, how does Jerusalem Farm like have the training or capacity to like do any of this? The answer is Bob Solger. He owns and operates Solar Design Studio up in Platte City. He helped us get solar on our farm. So we have the solar system on our farm here, and then we live together in a community house, and we have solar on that house as well. All the members of the Jerusalem Farm community. So he helped us get back in 2016, 17 solar on those two houses. But he's really been extremely generous with his time, working with me through this whole process, kind of teaching me how to do all the different steps of the solar design and installation process. So huge shout out to Bob Solger. Really thankful for his time helping to make this program possible. This would not have been possible without his generous help. Okay, so some benefits of Empower the Northeast as I see. I think it does make solar truly affordable for low-income homeowners. As I described, there's low to maybe no barriers for homeowners. It saves homeowners cost from the get-go. I think it also, again, going back to our kind of cornerstones of Catholic social teaching here at the farm, kind of honors the dignity of people to make something accessible to them that historically maybe has not been accessible to people below a certain income threshold. Um, I I think Jerusalem Farm has built a lot of trust in the Northeast community over the last 12 years. So I see it as kind of a cool thing where it's not a solar company because I mean, for better or for worse, there and as you all well know, there are a lot of solar companies out there that are really just out there to make a buck. And I've seen firsthand with homeowners who've had solar companies knock on their door and have shown them a system that has um, just modules that are heavily shaded or put on the north side of roofs or just badly designed systems. So I think it's a benefit that a trusted community partner like Jerusalem Farm can have an opportunity to design and install these systems for homeowners. They know they're not going to get ripped off with us. And then obviously the environmental benefits. I'm always thinking about the Hawthorne coal power plant, how that pollutes the air here that these homeowners are breathing, and how these solar power systems, little by little, are decreasing the need for such a coal burning power plant here in the Northeast. But it does have limitations. Power of the Northeast certainly has drawbacks, if you will. One huge one is it's not open to renters, right? So Jerusalem Farm only works with homeowners. There are many low-income renters in the Northeast, and we really aren't set up to help those renters in any way. Also, our geographic footprint is quite small. We only work in these 6 neighborhoods in the Northeast. Another thing is many people, even in the Northeast, there are a lot of trees in the Northeast, which is a good thing, but there's a lot of shade, right? So a lot of people in this area don't qualify for solar just because their roofs don't make sense for solar. And to kind of preview what I wanted to get into a little later, there's no community solar enabling legislation in Missouri or Kansas, which I see as a big I'll frame it as a big opportunity to be able to open solar up for a lot more people to access the benefits of in the future. And then lastly, it's really just me. So this is my full-time job here at the farm. I coordinate with a lot of the people. So we have the companions installing systems. We have an electrician we work with who does all the electrical and pulls permits at the city level. But I would eventually would like to have more people doing what I'm doing to increase our capacity for installing more systems in the Northeast. So it's halftime, y'all. So we'll have a nice, fun halftime show. I have Kesha and whoever this is. Those aren't who that is. Anyway, sorry. We don't have a halftime show, but I would like to have a halftime a discussion. So yeah, really appreciate everyone jumping on the call here, and would just be interested in initial feedback anyone has regarding what you've heard about Empower the Northeast or any questions you have for me. So open it up for anyone in the group.
I put a couple of questions in the chat. I was wondering if you help your homeowners weatherize their homes before you design and install the solar system, and what happens if they need a new roof? Great questions.
So yeah, I do push weatherization. Really, my first meeting with any homeowner, I have the application forms. I have a bunch of application forms for Community Action Agency's weatherization program, which is a free program for income qualified homeowners. So it's a pretty intense application, to be honest. So a lot of people I've helped fill out. That application is only available in English, and nobody at Community Action Agency speaks even Spanish. It's like English only.
Oh, no.
So yeah, I've helped a lot of homeowners fill that out. I like to tell the story of a homeowner who spoke or speaks either Burmese or Korean. So someone at the farm, one of our companions, spoke Burmese and English, and her dad spoke, or she spoke Korean and English. Her dad spoke Burmese and Korean. So we had like a four-way translation going on. Like Tin would say something in Burmese, then my friend's dad would translate it from Burmese to Korean, then Paz, our friend's name here, would translate it from Korean to English, and then I'd be able to understand. But yeah, point is, we do have, I do push that Community Action Agency's weatherization program. There is different income. So our cutoff is 80 or 60% area median income for people to qualify for our most generous financing model. Community action agencies cutoff is different. They're 200% of the poverty level, which is or the poverty line, federal poverty line, which is lower than our threshold. So there are a few homeowners who do qualify for our lowest financing block there, but don't qualify for community action agencies weatherization program. If that's the case, the next thing I suggest is Evergy's energy savings kit. It's not weatherization, it's far short of weatherization, but it's something it's way easier to qualify for. So unlike community action agencies, pretty nitpicky application process, Evergy's is super easy. And everyone in the Northeast automatically qualifies because of our zip code. Evergy has like certain zip codes that that people just automatically qualify for. So all you have to do is call in, schedule an appointment, and they'll come do some things. They'll do like low flow shower heads and faucets. They'll install LED lights. They'll do some like wrapped insulation around pipes. And that's pretty much what it is, but it's something and it'll help. I do also give people information about tax credits that are available to them. Again, this doesn't necessarily help people that are super low income, but upcoming programs through the IRA that hopefully are going to get rolled out in Missouri sooner rather than later. Again, we only work on the Missouri side. I hope that answers the question about weatherization. In terms of roof replacement, yeah, we work with a lot of homeowners that need, probably the vast majority of homeowners need roof replacement. So we have done roofs in the past. At this point, Jerusalem Farm is mostly contracting those out to contractors. But we will offer that as part of the we will roll that in with the cost of the system. So if people need a roof replaced, this also goes for electrical box upgrades or any upgrades, structural upgrades that they need with their roof. We can account that in the total cost and then roll that into that 25-year loan financing model. So people will just pay us back for the cost of everything over 25 years. Another thing I would mention is that whenever we do a roof in the Northeast, I approach that homeowner and say, hey, do you want solar? Because this is a great time to get solar if you just got a new roof. Hopefully that answers those questions. Any other questions or feedback from anyone? Okay, well, hearing none, I want to respect everyone's time and only have about 16 minutes left here till the end of the hour. So I wanted to talk just a little bit about maybe proposing what HRES might do in order to address this problem that Empower the Northeast is trying to address. But like I point out on this slide, we have some limitations, right? Where I kind of view it as, yeah, we're a good thing. I like to think. I think we're doing a good thing here, but our capacity is quite limited when you look at the grand scheme of things. So how can everyone do their part? How can HRES how might HRES help in this regard? So Bill McKibben, one of my heroes, whenever people say like, who are 3 people that you would love to have dinner with one day, Bill McKibben is often someone I mention, but he says it's better to screw in a senator than a light bulb. And the point here is, individuals can do so much, but it's really policy change that is, I think, going to bring these widespread changes that we need in order to really address this problem. So at the end, I wanted to kind of pose this question: what can HRES do to bring about more equitable access to affordable energy? I'm going to share a few thoughts, and then we'll circle back to this question. But this is kind of the overall question I want us to be thinking about. So again, the problem, I had this, just copy the slide from earlier, but essentially low-income people face some pretty significant barriers to get accessing solar, and they're the people that could benefit the most from solar from a cost, from an energy burn perspective. So what do we do about this? I think there are several sub-problems that are part of this, but I've kind of identified two here. One is that low-income households don't have adequate access to financing. So this is where I get a little bit into like this more esoteric discussion about, why is this kind of these big, broad concepts. And I will also say up front, a lot of this, or pretty much all of this, is coming straight from this book, Revolutionary Power, I mentioned earlier by Shalonda Baker. So again, super recommend this book. I checked it out from the downtown library, so the KC Mo Public Library has this book. Okay, so getting back to our discussion here. So one idea is, well, what if we placed a cap on the percentage of overall income that low to moderate income households pay? If we know that 6% is kind of that cutoff, if you're paying more than 6%, your energy is not affordable. That's a burden to you. What if we placed a cap on the overall percentage of income that low to moderate income households pay? We could also include a floor, right? So that people have to pay like 2 or 3% of their income on energy to offset right what is disproportionately affecting low income people. Pretty revolutionary. I know that could be a controversial thing to say the least, but that's one idea to throw out there. Another idea is we could compensate communities for environmental burdens. So recognizing that places like the Hawthorne coal power plant do put undue stress and cost on low-income communities, could we compensate people for that? Could we come up with a way to factor in the cost of having something like a coal burning power plant in your backyard and then factor that into the cost of energy? That could be a thing. Another idea would be to create different ways to determine creditworthiness. So instead of using a FICO credit score, which a lot of low-income people are not going to have a FICO credit score high enough to qualify for loans. Furthermore, there's a lot of research that shows that a FICO credit score is not necessarily a great predictor of whether you're going to pay back a loan or not. Or maybe I should say there are other metrics that could more accurately predict whether someone is going to pay back a loan. So could we use a different metric? And I think the answer is definitely yes, because some people are already doing this. So the Solstice Solar, which is based out of Cambridge, Massachusetts, they have all these MIT and Stanford people working at this company, but they came up with this idea of the energy score. So they are using this as an alternative to a credit score, and they've just developed this in the past like 3-4 years, and they've piloted it. And their initial results, they're saying like this is not only making credit more, or access to financing more accessible for low income people, but it also benefits solar companies because it's a more accurate score in terms of, or more accurate predictor of whether or not someone is going to pay off a loan. Posygen, they're I think a countrywide company. They've done a lot of work in Connecticut with Connecticut's Green Bank. Connecticut's Green Bank is apparently like one of the best green banks in the country. Yeah, oftentimes propped up as like this most like successful kind of model green bank for other states. But they use different metrics. It's not necessarily the energy score that Solstice uses, but they use their own metrics to figure out whether someone qualifies for financing or not. And again, kind of similar results. A lot more low-income people are able to access financing by using these different metrics. In the top right, you see this logo for Me Too Milwaukee Energy Efficiency Program. That's not a solar program, that's an energy efficiency program. I guess maybe similar to Community Action Agency's weatherization program here in Kansas City. But they use also a different metric than credit score to offer financing to low-income people primarily for energy efficiency upgrades in their homes. So clearly, this is being done in places around the country. I think it could easily be done here in the Midwest as well. So that's kind of some problem is this idea that it's very difficult for low-income people to access financing because of these barriers. Another problem that I see and that I'm pretty passionate about is community solar. And community solar is not enabled in Missouri or Kansas, although apparently we do have a few community solar installations, which I'll get into here in just a second. So yeah, I feel very passionately that we need community solar. There are many, many homeowners that we work with who have roofs that are too shaded, or that rent their home, or are not able to access financing for the rooftop solar. So many things that that make it impossible for homeowners to get solar. According to Watkins in this article, The Energy Score, 4 out of 5 American households can't get rooftop solar for one of a myriad of reasons. Also, according to NREL, the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, about 44% of businesses, so almost half of business in the U.S., also just don't have a roof that's suitable for solar. So how do those people reap the benefits of solar? One easy answer is community solar. So NREL defines community solar in this way: any solar project or purchasing program within a geographic area in which the benefits of solar project flow to multiple customers, such as individuals, businesses, nonprofits, and other groups. That's a pretty broad definition. So places like investor-owned utilities like Ameren and Evergy will, and most investor utilities do this, will have a huge solar farm, and you can pay a little more for electricity in order to basically subsidize the cost of that solar farm, and they'll call that community solar. That's definitely not available to low-income people. It's not true community solar, but based on this definition, I guess it could be. But when I'm talking about community solar, I'm talking about a locally owned, well, it could be owned by a nonprofit or a company, but a locally sited array in which people are able to, that have roofs that don't qualify for solar for whatever reason, are able to basically buy a subscription to that array. And then it's as if the solar panels, instead of being on the roof, they're just part of this local array. And then the low income piece of that is that, well, one, it could make sense for people to buy into that array if that actually lowers their electricity bills. But also a lot of these community solar projects have low income carve outs. So maybe 20% is set aside at a special rate just for people who are income qualified. So Missouri and Kansas both do not have enabling legislation, but they might have community solar. Just really yesterday and the day before, as I was doing research for this, kind of came across this interesting nugget. They do have, according to NREL, a few community solar projects. And I'm interested if anyone on this call knows any more about that. The Missouri legislature, I live in Missouri, the Missouri legislature had bills introduced last year, and actually the last several years, to enable community solar in Missouri. They did not make it out of committee. One got a hearing. There's a companion bill in the Senate and in the House in Missouri. I think it was the House bill that got a hearing, and it was destroyed by Ameren and Evergy. They both testified against them, as Michael Berg, who's a longtime policy director for Missouri chapter of the Sierra Club, said. It was after this hearing, he said, like, yeah, Valentine's Day comes once a year, St. Patrick's Day comes once a year, but every day is Ameren Day in the Missouri State Legislature. So yeah, they just kind of, just brought out all their big guns and destroyed this thing in committee feedback, which was unfortunate. Interestingly, it was sponsored by Republicans, and just Republicans, in both the Senate and the House. So maybe there's potential there, but we'll have to do something to get Ameren and Evergy to get at least not shooting it down every time it comes up. So this is off of a slideshow that NREL has on their website about community solar. This is all the community solar projects in the country. You can see some places like New York, Minnesota, Florida, Illinois, our Midwest neighbor, have a lot. Missouri and Kansas do have a few, right? Not a lot, but in fact, you can see these dots right in the Kansas City area on both the Kansas and Missouri sides. So I thought, what's this? We don't have enabling legislation. So this is a map of the areas in the country that have state level enabling legislation for community solar. Illinois is like a shining example of solar apparently in the country. There was some article I read recently that like scored states on their state level solar policy, and Illinois was the only state in the country to get a B, I think. There were no A's. Illinois got a B. A lot of the people got like a D's and F's. Missouri and Kansas were, I think, F's, if not a D. They're pretty low, unsurprisingly. So another slide from the NREL presentation, about 59% of community solar installations were in states with enabling legislation. So about 41% of community solar installation were in states without enabling legislation, which this is a new concept to me. I don't really know how this works. If it's nice to have enabling legislation, but you don't need it in order to just pop up a community solar project, I really don't know. So this is like, I apologize for this, super hard to read. I just copied and pasted this from an Excel spreadsheet. But NREL has a like live-ish list of community solar projects in the country in an Excel spreadsheet you can download from the website. So these are the projects in Missouri. There are 4 of them. One's in Bridgeton. Don't even know where that is. Assume it's further east since it's Ameren, Illinois. But the city of Independence, who has a municipally run electricity co-op, might be the proper term. They have 3 community solar installations according to NREL, installed in 2017 and 2018. And then this is these are the 3 community solar projects in the state of Kansas, one in South Hutch, one in Colby, both way further west. But as you can see, there is a community solar project in KCK. So really interested if anyone knows anything about these community solar projects. I really don't. Again, it was just within the last 48 hours that I discovered this. So I'd be interested in if anyone has any further information on this. But again, to go back to this kind of overall discussion, what can HRES do to bring more equitable access to affordable energy in terms of access to financing, in terms of policy around that, in terms of community solar? I know I presented, testified, submitted some comments to the Missouri State Legislature last year. Unfortunately, again, those bills didn't make it out of committee. I hope they are introduced again next year. I also realized that we have 1 minute remaining, so I apologize for that. And maybe this is something that you just take with you and think about, and maybe we could have a future discussion about this at a future Heartland Renewable Energy Society meeting. But this is the question I guess I would leave y'all with. I'm not sure, Ken, if you want to have a few moments for discussion or just want to wrap it up here. But
Sure,
that's what I have. Thank you so much for listening.
Sure, we can run a little longer if there are questions.
I have a question about the cost. You were showing some cost figures for your rooftop solar installations between $2 and $5 per watt. And I'm just curious as to how that I think that this is what you're quoting maybe, but I don't know, is this what the commercial type folks that are getting quotes from for-profit type, construction companies that install solar? Is this in line with what they would charge? I don't know if you have that kind of information or not, but just curious to know how that compares.
Yeah, great question. This is just to kind of illustrate that solar is expensive. This is not necessarily our costs. So with our first 2 systems that we installed, we did the math in terms of what we paid for everything, and our estimate was about $2.16 per watt, averaging those first 2 installations. So that's what Jerusalem Farm has done with our installation so far. This 2 to 5 figure is just a nationwide estimate. That's according to Solar Energy International. That's a super wide range, right? So I went in and looked at Energy Sage. They say they give this 275 per watt as their national average. So I just wanted to show some like general numbers just to illustrate that solar is expensive and maybe inaccessible for low income people. But yeah, Jerusalem Farm's cost per installed watt so far has been $2.16. And again, that's based on our 2 installations so far.
So when energy companies like Evergy look at what it costs them to put in a coal-fired power plant or a natural gas-fired power plant, their cost per watt, I believe, is quite a bit higher. I don't know what it would be, but I hear so many discussions at the lowest, the levelized cost of energy. I guess that's kind of an accounting term, that the lowest levelized cost of energy is for solar. But yeah, it's a lot of money to spend for an individual homeowner maybe, but for a big company, solar is still, I think, the cheapest form of energy. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point, John. I understand the same thing. I understand that solar is cheaper than fossil fuel infrastructure at this point. So a company like Evergy or Ameren, you would expect, if they want to do the lowest cost thing, that they would be installing solar, and that would mean lower prices for us as well, the lower price for the consumer. The problem is that these are investor-owned utilities. So not only are they trying to provide electricity for people who need it, but they're also trying to turn a profit for their shareholders. It's a company that you can buy stock in, just like Walmart or Target or whatever. And because of that kind of dual goal of not only providing electricity, but also turning a profit off of that, they, as a for-profit company, are, yeah, it's in the name, trying to make a profit. And apparently, I'm not an economics expert by any means, but apparently fossil fuel infrastructure is still more profitable than solar. So solar's cheaper, but it's easier for a company to turn a profit off of fossil fuel infrastructure. At this point, I think it's mostly fossil gas. I don't think there are any coal plants really being built in the United States that I know of, or very few anyway. But fossil gas is apparently easier to turn a profit off of. And now, of course, we have these liquid natural gas terminals, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, another thing I understand is that there's a large upfront cost for installing a coal-fired power plant. So some of these plants have like 50-year plus leases on them. And it's in order for a company to get a return on their investment for the operation of that coal plant, they have to operate that for those like full 50 years. So that's, I think, explains some of the pushback to closing some power plants. But yeah, the bottom line is companies, investor-owned companies, for-profit companies don't really care about what the cheapest form of energy is. They care about what's going to return them the most profit. And that isn't necessarily solar. I'm excited to hear what other people have to say on that, but that is my understanding.
The problem with the coal fire is the cost to the environment is not getting passed to the coal companies at all.
Right.
And actually, we pay that in increased car and homeowner insurance. When those storms go through, and the tornadoes, hurricanes, fires, floods, you see all those damaged houses and cars. Well, we're paying for those in insurance rates.
Right. Yeah, you make a great point, which I think goes into this argument of like developing a cost for carbon, something like a carbon tax, or yeah, many different models to have people pay for that. But yeah, it's a negative externality, right? That is not
Yeah, well, we're
for.
paying for it whether they're calling it a carbon tax or not. We get it through insurance costs.
Right. So they're passing on that cost to consumers instead of paying it themselves. Yeah.
Right.
Hey, Adam, do you want to stop sharing? Excuse me.
Yeah, sure.
Now? There we go.
Cool.
Another question that sometimes comes up here is municipalities. There's no real tax incentive for a municipality to install solar on their buildings that they use to maintain their infrastructure, because they don't necessarily pay an income. So there's no basic return on that investment for either buying electric vehicles or installing solar panels and things like that. Is that still the case with the IRA?
Yeah, super good question, John. It's not, so that has changed. So with the IRA, one huge thing for us as a nonprofit is that it enabled this process called elective pay. So the idea is now a nonprofit, a government agency, an agency that does not pay taxes, they can fill out a bunch of paperwork, which I'm working on right now for our first install. It's very boring, but and kind of intimidating. But the idea is that once that is approved, once our project gets approved, we will just be given a check, I think, essentially from the Treasury for 30% of the project cost. So that's a game changer for nonprofits that they are able to access the same benefits from that 30% tax credit now, and that includes municipalities.
So you could leverage that to helping more people then once that's in place.
Yeah, so here at Jerusalem Farm, that's our plan is we get that money back, we put it right back in the coffer, so to speak, to then install the next system.
I guess I have two questions.
Yeah.
One, Hawthorne Plant supposedly has put in a lot of PV panels that are available for people to select for a rate pay. Now I know that probably comes a little higher premium than the regular bill. Is that could help renters, so to speak, if they so can afford it, which they may not.
Yeah.
And the other is Hawthorne, from a coal burning point of view, being phased out, or has it already been?
My understanding, you bring up a good point. Yeah, there is a bunch of solar being installed at Hawthorne, which I'm excited about. I guess, yeah, like you said, you can pay a little more for that. I think that does the opposite really of helping low income people, but it's a thing. I kind of view that as kind of like we're just subsidizing Evergy. They're just passing that cost on to us for like doing the right thing that they should have done anyway. I also see it as a way for them to say like, hey, we installed a bunch of solar here. Don't worry about this coal burning behemoth behind us. Like, look at our solar. That kind of just shift the focus. My understanding is that Evergy is not planning to close Hawthorne anytime soon. I think 2050, 2055 or some numbers that were floated out. They have to do a new plan like every 3 years. They have to pass through the Public Service Commission. And I think that's the most recent date that they have according to their most recent plan. I was fortunate enough to go to the Kansas City Climate Summit that was held at Rockhurst University last fall. And one of the presentations, there was an Evergy person there presenting about, I forget exactly what, but the first thing she said at the beginning of her presentation was like, I want everyone to know we are not closing down Hawthorne. Just get that out of your minds like right now. And that was how she led off. So that is what Evergy is saying as of less than a year ago.
Well, back in, what was it, 79 is when I first come here, and that's when Wolf Creek come online. Well, Bayer used to get steam from, I worked at Mobay at Bayer, and they used to get their steam from Hawthorne. And when Wolf Creek come online, they were using Hawthorne for a peaking plant, so we couldn't have reliable steam. So we had to put in our own steam generators out there. But I mean, the co-energy aspect of a coal fire helps pay a lot of the cost, but we lost our steam when Wolf Creek came online. So that was a long time ago, and a lot has changed since then.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to drive to work and get stopped by the coal cars all the time.
Oh, wow.
I used to haul a lot of coal out there. Since I'm retired, I don't get to experience that.
Gotcha. Good to see you, by the way, George. Thanks for hopping on.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was in high school, I'm 31. I graduated in high school in 2011, and I remember in our class learning, like seeing the overall electricity generation mix in the U.S., and coal was number one by far. And in those, 15 years since, we have shifted to gas. So coal has continued to decrease. Gas has continued to be a larger and larger share of electricity generation. And even though fossil gas is still a fossil fuel, and if you account for methane leaks can be just as bad as coal, I think it does illustrate that market can change really quickly. And so it gives me hope, I think, that in another 15 years, maybe solar can make some headway in other renewables. I saw a graphic recently that was showing that in 2026, which is just 2 years away, they predict that solar will what was it? That renewables as a whole will overtake coal in terms of generation capacity, which is a big leap, and I was kind of surprised to see that. But I think eventually that will happen. As MLK would say, like the arc of the universe bends towards justice, but I also think only if like we make it do that, right? Like we are, what we do matters. So I hope to continue to make it possible for not only possible, but like the thing for Hawthorne to close sooner rather than later. I know Sierra Club Missouri has that as like one of their campaigns. Billy Davies is my main contact there. He's an organizer with Missouri Sierra Club, but they've been working on pretty much just an education campaign in the Northeast because a lot of people don't even know the thing is there. To try to raise awareness about this coal plant and eventually get it closed.
One of the problems too is the plants they put up on the Missouri River, probably in the last 20 years, that you said take 50 years to pay off. So they're not really worried about that. A current event that's happening, they're developing better storage methods for, Tesla has those big storage batteries. They're doing a lot in Australia to improve their grid, but there are two new batteries coming online. There's a sodium ion, and then there's the iron air battery that, it's basically you're reducing rust to store energy, and then you're making it again to create energy, and that's
Wow.
pretty interesting.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
Iron is cheap.
Huh. Super cool. Yeah, you bring up a great point.
There's some videos on YouTube about that.
Okay.
The iron air battery.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, I didn't hear about that in the Carbon Almanac. That must be even more recent than the Carbon Almanac.
I spend a lot of time on YouTube doing solar and whatever.
Super cool. Great way to learn. University YouTube. Yeah, it was within the last year of Hawaii. I read an article about Hawaii closing their last coal-fired power plant, and they essentially replaced it with a giant battery. I think there's that's going to be the future. I think a part of the future is a lot more battery storage, like John had mentioned before we started recording.
So I have a question about the finances for the lower income people. So these people, homeowners that are in the, I guess, lower income rating, they are paying electrical bills now. And so you're able to take advantage of the tax incentive, I guess this 30% tax incentive, because you guys own the thing. And so they continue to pay you back at the same apparently amount that they would be paying if they were buying electricity from Evergy. So it sounds like within the 25-year loan period, you're charging them 0% for the loan. So it sounds like because they're not paying any interest or there's no interest in the equation of this determining the payback time, you're getting your money back within the 25 years. Am I right there? I mean, it sounds like your finances work out in favor of the homeowner.
They do, yeah. So Yeah, I guess I would say that Jerusalem Farm is not a typical nonprofit. Again, we have this seed funding in the form of these grants that we got to start our program. And yeah, we're not necessarily making a return on this. I myself am a Vista volunteer, so I don't get any payment through Jerusalem Farm. I get my stipend through Vista. Jerusalem Farm does pay their employees, but again, we call them full-time volunteers because it's a very low living stipend. So that allows us to do a lot of what we do. It allows us to do our home repair and not charge people for the cost of labor. It allows us to, yeah, honestly keep the cost of labor so low for these systems. So I get that that's something that can't necessarily be replicated in a lot of places. A lot of people aren't willing, like so we have 4 cornerstones at Jerusalem Farm, one of which is simplicity and this idea of like simple living, not living with a lot. And I get that that's not, for everyone. So that is a pretty strong caveat, I think, for our program. But yeah, that being said, we are, yeah, basically, I mean, the way I look at it, the only like revolutionary thing about our program is the fact that we will essentially hold loan for 25 years for a low income homeowner. Not many other places are going to be able to do that and be able to like, yeah, float that cost for 25 years. So that's really the only innovative part, I think, of what we're doing. That's like the big difference. But yeah, you're right. This model would have to, I think, be changed for it to be sustainable for most other nonprofits.
Does the 30% help you guys fund your program?
Yeah, it does. It absolutely does. Yeah. So we are, yeah, planning to put that right back in to the program and then help pay for the cost of the next homeowner. And hopefully we can be, getting to the point where we can be doing installs for people who are not low income, and that what they pay us would also be put forward to help fund the cost of installations for low income homeowners, kind of getting towards that Tom Shoes model.
You mentioned your community's solar. Can you fold that in with a community garden and do like agrivoltaics or something like that?
That'd be a great idea. I would love to do that. There's a gentleman who is from Kansas City and worked at UMKC who we worked with in the past. He now got a job at Bard College in upstate New York. So he's been there for the past few years. But he had his class, he's a professor there. He had his class do like make a database basically in the Northeast, like an interactive thing where we can see what homes have good roofs that are not shaded and also likely low income, based on a bunch of different like census tract data and other stuff his students did research on to figure out like what home should we go and kind of target for our program, which is super helpful. He offered like, can we do anything for you next year? It's a spring semester class. And I was thinking it would be great to have them look at the Northeast and see like, okay, what are some lots that might be good for community solar? And I think that might help our arguments to the state legislature or whatever to say like, here's where we can put them. This is what they could generate. This is how many people they could help. Yeah, I think it would be great. I love your idea of pairing solar with food generation.
Sure. I eat every day.
Same here. Same here. I enjoy doing it, in fact.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're coming up. We've got 10 minutes. We'll be at this an hour and a half. So probably should wind things up.
Oh, cool. Well, yeah, I appreciate everyone giving me the time of day to do this. And thanks for your discussion. I would, yeah, encourage you to continue thinking about, how can we make solar more accessible? What can HRES do to be part of that? And would be, yeah, interested to hear more thoughts, or Ken, if that's something we want to discuss at an upcoming meeting, I'd be excited about it. I'd also say, last but not least, if any of you would be interested in checking out Jerusalem Farm, you're more than welcome. We'd love to welcome you all here. We have community nights on the second Tuesday of each month. If you go to jerusalemfarm.org, we have all our community night events on that website for the rest of the year. But also, if that doesn't work for you, just anytime you want to stop by, you can send us an email or give us a call first to give us a little heads up you'd be by. But we'd love to show you around, give you a tour, have you over for dinner, whatever. We could even show you some of the solar systems we've installed as part of Empower the Northeast. But yeah, we'd love to welcome you here if you're interested in checking out the farm.
Very good.
Yeah.
I see
Thank
some
you.
box happening here.
Super cool. Thank you all. Appreciate your attention.
All right, this will be on the HRES website in just a short while. So thank you, everybody. And I think
Thank
I'll
you.
shut her down now. Goodbye.
Thanks, Ken. Thanks,
Goodbye,
everyone.
Ken. Thanks.
Thank you, everybody.